Welcome back to another episode of Close Encounters. Today we're going to have a little bit of a fun conversation, I think. It's a bit of an extension, I think, from our last conversation about, well, first, what do I do with my 2000, collection of 2000 CDs, but also just how we discover new music, in today's age of technology. I don't know if I don't, everything's all on apps. So it's almost an extension. Just we're gonna have a little bit of fun and talk about some of the latest music we've discovered or rediscovered, that we're kind of into. So maybe let's take it away. I don't know who wants to go first.
I can go first.
Okay. So
Okay.
I was like, were you even born in this song?
No. I was born 1999. The album came out in November. I was born in February. So basically I'm like 9 months old when this song came out.
So you came out of the womb and you were listening to it.
No. Okay, this is Fiona Apple's Paperback. I found it out because I was watching Sex and the City, and the show was around 1999, so it got mentioned in the show multiple times. And then there was a scene that when Miranda met Steve at the bar, and then Steve there was some college kids talking about Fiona Apple. I was like, okay, let me check out, because it's a pretty interesting name, like Fiona Apple. And I check it out. I was like, oh my god. I keep listening to that music for the entire week on repeat. Mm-hmm. So basically it's called Paperback. So basically the song was inspired when she was in the car and there was a plastic bag and she thought it was a dove. But when it comes closer, she found out it's a plastic bag. But she just changed it into paperback to kind of sound more catchy. And then she was saying I thought it was a paper bag, but it would just I thought it was a bird, but it was just a paper bag. And later on I thought he was a boy. I thought he was a man, but he's just a little boy. It's kind of like an interesting metaphor of I think it's really female sided, when you found out. I think it's a broke up song because I listened to it. Yeah, I think it's pretty much describing that when you're first into a relationship or a situationship, and then you think, oh, he might be the one, and then turn out to be oh, he's just a boy. I feel it's the perfect metaphor when you go through something like that. And also I was really touched by the lyrics, because I feel it's almost poetic about the thing that she wrote. I don't know, it's just it's different from pop music I listen to. And also her voice is kind of SZA, not SZA. Oh my god, not SZA. Oh my god, another who's in the 6 Feet Under outro?
Yeah, I was gonna say she didn't.
Not SZA. Not SZA. Wait, sorry. 6 Feet Under outro. Outro.
Actually, while you're looking that up, I was actually thinking. I'm glad.
Sia.
Oh, Sia.
Okay. Oh my god, Sia. Because it's kind of rustic voice. There's a quiet intensity in her voice, and also in the music they have a horn arrangement in the background. I was okay, that's giving poetic, I don't know, epic, whatever. So that's my pick for it. And also she got some pretty good music Across the Universe, and the whole album in this song is pretty good. So yeah.
Wow, my god, I can't believe you discovered because of Sex and the City. So Fiona Apple for me, that was the year I graduated college.
Yeah, because I was interested. I was you definitely know, because it seems like a big bop during that period. So
well, the thing is, I wasn't a big Fiona Apple fan. I never was. I was actually the bubblegum fan, the bubblegum pop and all the groups, and I was very much into urban music at the time. So it was at the transition, she kind of popped up into the scene as they were at the tail dove of we call it the alternative rock era. But then this is also the time where a lot of the female like the female singer-songwriters that really came up, but that had a much more of an edgier sound. And that was like coming sort of after like the Sarah McLachlan discovery in the mid early 90s. And then she was running, like she produced and was like the Lilith Fair. So there was like this whole movement of like female and rock and roll where it wasn't really that featured previously, you know, like because she fell into that category of like the female like edgier sound and not your like sing, you know, like your Joni Mitchell where it was like very very folky or very very poppy or like that R&B. It wasn't that. It was like now it's the female getting into that side of the boys club, you know, like in that competitive rock and roll space. And so I was like, oh my god, there's like complete flashback day. I'm just like, you know, like how did you guys like, I was like, were you guys even born when the song came out? Anyways, I'm glad you liked the song. It was just like,
yeah,
even for music, I was like, I don't even know the band, but that's another era where it's like it's a very very like Southern California LA type of band that was popping out of everywhere during that time. So you're like a rock and roller, like a hardcore punk rock at heart, Nick.
I mean, it depends on the day, because it depends what I'm really into listening. But that's why everyone who usually, I mean, it's kind of like you mentioned in the last video. It's like whoever steps foot into my car, if I'm connected to my phone, then they're usually like having an aneurysm trying to figure out what song's gonna be next, because you have like 10 genres crammed together in 1 hour. The Toxicity is the name of the whole album. That album is probably top 3. I mean, you said punk. I would classify them more as metal. Yeah, I would. I wouldn't really go on a limb and call them punk rock, but I think that album itself is one of the most influential albums.
But my question is, how did you discover this album? Like, how did you discover them? I don't even, I mean, look, that is again, like, that's also again veering towards into a genre that it's not really my cup of tea. But you know, that was again, like that kind of scene was popping up during that time, that era, where these types of bands were coming out of the wazoo. You know, it's like that's also around the era of like Green Day and
I love Green Day.
I mean, that was like also the time of like Linkin Park and like,
Linkin Park, exactly.
Disturbed, Slipknot.
Yeah.
I mean, it was kind of like, you know, baby steps. I mean, I started listening to like Disturbed and Linkin Park when I was like in 2nd, 3rd grade. And then eventually, you know, at some point I graduated to Slipknot. And at first
but you were in the 2nd and 3rd grade. My question is, how did you come across these music when your household was all full of classical music?
By recommendation, actually. That's how you found out about all the songs. It's like, you know, your friend's like, hey, you got to check out this really cool song. Listen to my iPod, you know, and then you'd listen. You'd be like, wow, these Disturbed guys are pretty cool. Hey mom, can I buy a couple songs on iTunes? Yeah, I mean, I started listening to Disturbed and Linkin Park that early because one of my friends, their older brother used to listen to it quite a lot. I'm thinking about it right now. And then he was like, hey, I'm into like these really like the best metal band of all time. And I mean, Disturbed was metal for about like 1 album before they turned into rock. But whatever, it's okay. Eventually, at some point in high school, I probably was going through something and I was kind of searching for new music to listen to. And eventually I landed on Slipknot, and I was a little bit like mentally, how do I put this, overwhelmed with like their music videos and their lyrics. But then after a certain point, you kind of embrace it if you actually like the music, right? And I kind of discovered System not too long after that. Especially this album, which I think is great. And I mean, you can be fans of System of a Down, you can not be fans of them, but you have to really appreciate their constant need for activism. Like they're big advocates for the Armenian genocide, and they're always constantly trying to support their home country because half the band is originally from Armenia. Anyway, their songs are usually politically motivated. Not that I'm the most politically motivated person in the world, but I enjoy listening to their music because there's always some kind of message, and the melodies are very catchy, and it's overall very good. I don't know if you guys had a chance to listen to the song, but I don't know if you guys actually know the song is about ADD, or at least that's what the lead singer was talking about in an interview, where there aren't too many lyrics in this song, but the melody itself is really, really, really pretty. And I think one of the first lyrics was like, eating seeds as a pastime activity. That's usually, I think that some people are kind of speculating what that could mean, and some people are trying to think of whether or not that wouldn't be like people with ADD, whether they'd have to take medication in order to kind of remain productive throughout the day, right? And I guess what they're kind of saying in the song is like, we live in a society where we just drug up our people, to live normally, and that's that's what people assume.
Yeah, anyway. It's speaking to its time when sort of this idea of seeing a shrink. Like now it's so easy for everyone just like, I have a shrink. Before, back in those days, it was like not even as publicly, not the word is not acceptable, but you're not very open to talk about it, right? But then that was sort of like that surge in an era sort of where people are now being diagnosed with like ADHD, like especially like depression was one of those first things that you start hearing about, So it was one of those like that kind of thing where like the mental illness society was like a discussion of like everyone is now needs to be on a pill, right? Everyone has some sort of disorder that they need to be diagnosed and need to be put on a pill. And I think maybe that's a reaction to it speaks to the time. But my question for you is, are you still though following them? I mean, look, I'm not familiar with the band, but it is one of those bands that is around that era. And are you still following them? Oh
yeah, they released 2 new singles. I'm trying to think whether it was this like academic year, but yeah, I downloaded them. They're still good. They're still good. They haven't lost their chops, Cindy. That's something that you can't say for all bands,
No, it's true. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Like they haven't, like the lead singer Serge, like, by the way, you said Serge. The lead singer's name is Serge. I thought that was pretty funny. Play on words. His voice is nuts. Like it's absolutely crazy. I think that, you need to listen to more of their, their top, I don't want to say their top hit, but their number 1 hit of all time is Chop Suey, if you've ever heard of it. But I could send a link, and that's another really good one. It's like literally Chop Suey because he just took a bunch of kind of lyrics from all over the place and cut them together, So, yeah, I don't know how many views that has on YouTube. It's crazy popular.
Wow.
Like, look, it's just like really, well, they're just as popular as really any pop star. I'm willing to say that because they had tickets out and it sold in about 2 hours in Vegas because they don't perform often. They have no tour.
Recently?
Last year, I was so pissed. I was like, I'm not the kind of person to like, willingly blow so much money in one shot. And that was something I was considering because like tickets were like $400 for like okay seats, and then you have to buy the flight, then you have to buy the hotel in Vegas, and then you have to have money to spend in Vegas, right? And I was like thinking about it, and we were even talking to a contact of ours who has like some hotels in Vegas that might get us a discount. And then I'm like, all right, let's go, let's do it. And then I was going to buy the tickets, and it's like sold out. I'm like, shit. Like, like that took about an hour and a half, because they don't perform often. But I guess it was tempting for them to perform at that festival since they were the highlight.
Interesting.
Because like you have to understand, they don't really tour in North America. They usually don't. If anything, they tour like South America, maybe Europe, but like they've been pretty quiet on the tour scene, you know.
Yeah. Well, it's all supply and
they're
demand,
high in demand.
right? Like, is there a demand for them to come back?
Yeah, big time.
So
big time.
So that's usually how it is. And Annie, you have a very interesting one.
So basically, if you look at my music that I listen to, like most of it is just very like disgustingly like trendy and popular stuff like K-pop, J-pop, or whatever is trending on TikTok. So this is like the only like thing I've been obsessed with lately that's like, you know, a little bit less like trendy. But it's from an opera called The Hours.
Yeah.
And I'm not even like an opera girly. Like I don't listen to opera, I don't watch opera that often. But this one, like after I watched it, I was like speechless, and it kept, like I was like contemplating life afterward for a long time. It was like so beautiful.
Wait, so you actually went to see the opera production, or you?
Yeah, I went to see it. My friend was like, I have an extra ticket because like someone canceled or something. So I went instead. And it was just so crazy. I think they just performed their last show though, so you guys can't see it for a while. Yeah, but it was crazy. And I don't want to spoil the story, but it was crazy.
Right. Well, look, I mean, it's definitely a whole variety, right? And so mine was as a result of having to do some research that I needed to do for the programming side. And then I came across this artist, Saudi artist, Tam Tam. And I was really blown away by because a lot of her stuff is all sung in Arabic. So you're not really sure as to what she's singing about, right? But I really love her identity as someone who, and so the backstory of her is she's born and raised in Saudi, but actually moved to LA when she was quite young, like when she was like in 12 or 13, and goes back and forth between LA and Saudi, and coming from a country that is completely closed when I arrived here, and then to all of a sudden now it opened up, and then you discover her, and I was really just impressed by what she's trying to do. And it's obvious that she has some Western, education, because that you could hear it in her music, and she's surrounded by very experienced, producers. But I think I love that she also still tries to hold on to her roots as a Saudi woman, but she's also advocating for, for women's rights, women power. And I think that's a message you could see across sort of her Instagram and her socials and her beliefs as what she wants to do and what she wants to achieve. And I think it's just like looking at artists around the world and just from someone from this part of the world, just trying to find a voice and fight for her, artists here trying to fight to get their works to be heard. And that's why I really love, I love that track. I love the background. I love how she tries to pay homage to her own, to her own roots, which is really important, and I think, it's a very Western sound, but at the same time, she's created a sound that is very distinct to her. And I love her voice too. It's a very distinct voice. So I've been like binge listening to her stuff, or I binge listened to her stuff for a while, and I go back to her. And I think it goes back to some of, our conversation last time, just like how do we discover music, and how do we fall on these music. And even just listening to my son's playlist and some of those stuff, again, it's like stuff that was around when I was like a kid, like not even like Fiona Apple, like the 80s songs from the 80s. He heard, I was like, where in the world did you hear these music from? And he knows them. And I was like, and I guess it's all the revivals, right? Like all the revivals of those classic songs. And then it kind of, begs us to kind of discuss this, we touched upon a little bit, right? Like, is there any more original stuff? because everyone is kind of digging stuff from the past. Like I think our pop culture is not coming up with a lot of original content. I mean, even just looking at television, television is bringing back all the old TV shows, like remakes of all, you know, from Friends to Sex and the City to Frasier to all of these shows that are just not original content anymore. And music is the same, right? Like they're bringing back these songs that were once a big hit through other channels of, maybe it's in a video game, maybe it's in a TV show, maybe it's in a movie, maybe it's in an ad campaign, maybe someone sung it on TikTok or something, and then now it's popular again, which I guess is great, right? It kind of like, it closes the gap between what we call, you know, that it closes that like pop culture generation gap for you guys to be able to discover things like Fiona Apple, you know, things like System of Down, like, you know, I think that's great. But what does it do? I think for me, the bigger question is, what does it do for an industry that is, you know, that we're supposed to be creative, right? Whether it's the commercial side or the cultural side. How do we stay creative? And you know, I don't know. Again, there's no answer to this, but it does make me think about it. You know, like the positive side is you're discovering all these music that existed before you guys were born, which is fabulous, right? And then that's why, like, I think for me, the difference is like, now I turn on the radio, I cannot tell the difference between Dua Lipa and Selena Gomez just from their voice, right? Or like Doja Cat. Like all those three names, I had to force myself to remember the song to associate the artist. But if you take away their names and put those songs side by side, their voices, in my mind, are not very distinct. And this is what I'm saying, like those days, like back, like I think what maybe draws you to like System of Down or like even like Fiona Apple is that like their voices are so distinct. It's a very distinct sound. You know, like I always remember just like the radio could come on, the first note they sing, I'm like, okay, this is so-and-so, this is so-and-so, because all these artists have such a unique voice and such a unique sound that you can easily remember and identify. And I think that's what keeps their longevity, right? So even now, 30 years, you know, 25 years down the pipeline, 26 years down the pipeline, you listen to Fiona Apple and it's still just a unique sound. It doesn't sound like anything of now, but it's still really good. Right? And I mean, I can't imagine, like, if we were to listen to some of the stuff now, like 20 years later, is that going to still be the same kind of feeling of like, oh my God, it was such a special song?
I think so. I mean, people like listen to, you know, the oldies but goodies, no?
Well, I mean, I guess, but then I think because, you know, I think we're in that transition period because we lived for centuries without this thing called the online access, right? So no matter how much you sped up, there was a delay reaction, right? And so meaning that regardless of whether it came from a vinyl to a cassette to a videotape to a CD, there was a lag. All that stuff has to be discovered through a traditional media platform, right? Whether it's the radio, it's printed newspaper, it's magazines, it's flyer, it's television.